Over to you.
Thank you very much, Daniel Ohome. For a moment there, I thought you would almost bite your tongue. Thank you very much indeed.
I was on it all Monday morning, so it wouldn't pass.
Absolutely. Let's get right into the conversation. The Member of Parliament for Nyeri Town, Duncan Mathenge, or DMM, joins us this night. For the record, we extended this invite to the Member of Parliament for Matungu, that is Nabulindo. But then again, at around 10 minutes to 7, he wrote us a text message. Of course, claimed he was involved in an emergency meeting in Naivasha and therefore will not be able to attend. So the panel was balanced, but then Nabulindo pulled out in the last minute. So we'll be engaging the Member of Parliament for Nyeri Town, elected on a UDA ticket right here in studio. Karibu sana Mheshimiwa, and you're very much welcome to KBC.
Asante sana.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for hosting me.
Karibu. You were having a conversation earlier or this evening in the National Assembly as regards the demonstrations by the opposition on Monday. Probably from where you sit as a national leader, your general take on what we saw on Monday in the streets of Nairobi and probably some parts of Kisumu.
It is clear that
yes.
The Azimio leader has always been a merchant of fear in the Kenyan political scene.
Why do you say so?
I say so because when I look at his checkered political career, out of 5 attempts at the presidency, in 1997, when all Kenyans wanted Moi out of leadership after his 24 years, after his 19 years at the helm, he joined Moi in the hope that Moi would appoint him, anoint him his successor. When you look at where Kenya was at that time, including the push for multipartyism led by his father, and the other luminaries like Kenneth Matiba and Charles Rubia, and the level of involvement of the young Odinga then, it was unimaginable that he could have joined forces with Moi. He had been detained by Moi. He had escaped jail by a whisker after the 1982 coup that left the likes of Ochuka executed and scores of university students killed.
And which he has denied involvement, including being bailed out by the courts.
However, the narrative that has been given by others, including the visits to Ochuka at Moi Air Base, nobody else has ever come to provide him with an alibi. His denial has been and remained uncorroborated.
Okay.
Then we come to when he missed the anointing by Moi. He joins Moi Kibaki in 2002. But their marriage of convenience would only last for 3 years. And thereafter, the fallout after the failed bid to change the constitution, to get a new constitution in 2005. And that demonstrates that Raila Odinga is an impatient man. He was not patient enough to stay within the Moi administration. He was not patient enough to stay within the Kibaki administration, despite them winning against retired President Uhuru Kenyatta and KANU in 2002. Then we would go into the contest that resulted in the lowest moment for our country after the 2007 elections. And that election almost saw our country torn down the middle. It took the intervention of the international community to come and save us from going the Rwanda route. Despite the unity government that was formed after the 2007-2008 post-election violence, we would still fight a big divide between the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister going into the 2013 competition. How come, if, as Raila has put himself as the person who could have united Kenyans, how come he was unable to unite the government of national unity that he served as a Prime Minister and President Uhuru as a Deputy Prime Minister to go into elections in 2013 under a unitary system where all Kenyans were together, as we had been persuaded to pursue after the 2007 fiasco. Once again, we see the lack of wisdom in holding the country together.
And that is on, you were saying that is on the part of the former Prime Minister. But let's just come very quickly to the Monday demonstrations so that we move on from Monday.
So I was bringing in the chronology.
Okay.
That when you look at that history, the seed of fear among Kenyans, whenever Raila Odinga tries to contest the presidency or disputes elections in this country, is known. Even before his troops of demonstrators had hit the streets, shops in Nairobi did not open on Monday morning. The normal traffic, Thika Road, Mombasa Road, Jogoo Road, Outer Ring Road, Langata Road, Gong Road, there was not the usual Monday morning traffic. Secondly, what is this penance that Raila Odinga and his team has, that every time he's calling maandamano, it has to coincide on a day that schools are reopening? What is this? Does he want to get our children caught up, the children of Kenya, caught up in the violence and mayhem that has become the trademark and the hallmark?
When would have been your best day to see him in the streets if it is not Monday that he called for demonstrations?
Why pick on a day when children are returning to school? We saw it. We saw it when schools were opening earlier in the year. We've seen it when schools were when children were going back from half term. These dates are announced months in advance by the Ministry of Education. Why? What a coincidence. What a funny coincidence. However, the peddling of fear, the merchants of fear in this country, the time for this country to unshackle itself from this hold of politicians who peddle fear to ascend to power. From the, it looks like it is a designed path for Raila Odinga, that after 5 attempts at the presidency, 3 times coming in as runners-up, and the age factor, it is clear that he is so desperate that he can do anything irrespective of the outcome of what the Kenyan nation would be.
All right.
He would wish to ascend to power at any cost.
And we'll look at that, the accession to power, and whether the proposed path by some of the stakeholders is the right way. But let's first talk about the police response to the demonstrations, because your colleagues in Parliament, and I think you've seen them in the precincts and outside the precincts of Parliament, saying that the response by police is what fueled the violence in the demonstrations. Otherwise, the demonstrators planned to have a peaceful demonstration.
Unfortunately, history is not on Raila's side. At any one time that he has called demonstrations, be it in Nairobi, be it in Kisumu, be it in Mombasa. Why did they need to destroy a bank? What has had the response of the police to do with the Kenya Commercial Bank? One of the shops that was rooted in Kisumu belonged to a family that has done business in Kisumu for a very long time. And the build-up to the demonstrations had clearly indicated to every peace-loving Kenyan that these were not going to be peaceful demonstrations. If they were going to be peaceful demonstrations, when we listened to the rally that he had held in Kisumu, urging his supporters to be available on Monday for the Monday demonstrations, he went and bade them farewell. He told them he's embarking on a journey that he may not come back. And therefore, if they wish to see, if they wish to tell the stories about his last journey, they had better come out in large numbers. They had better follow him. What is this bye-bye that he was bidding? The following day, he was in Mombasa. He sang a song where he again bid his followers in Mombasa goodbye.
And you think this was
What was this goodbye? That was a coded message.
Okay.
What was the goodbye that he was telling? The issues that he has raised, the issues about the cost of living, are genuine and legitimate. They are not unique to Kenya. If you go to the 10 most expensive countries to live in Africa, Kenya is not one of them. It's not among yet the 10 most expensive
Let's
countries.
focus here.
But we agree that the cost of living is high.
Let's focus, we'll probably turn the ball a bit because it is not unique to Kenya, but there are about 50 million Kenyans watching you today. And obviously they don't care what is happening in Uganda or wherever else. As a member of parliament, what are the immediate interventions you're engaging in as members of parliament to ease the cost of living, to probably even avert these demonstrations?
The interventions that need to happen have to be interventions that are sustainable. And we cannot look at the cost of living in isolation. One, we are in a situation where this country has gone through the worst drought in our recent history. And therefore, as a country, we are food deficient. The issue of subsidizing food, and you can tell from even your news item that the millers appearing before parliament are producing a document that the Ministry of Agriculture, that they were supposed to have entered an agreement into, is denouncing. And therefore, the hoodwinking and outright lying to Kenyans that the money that was being put in the budget as a subsidy to food was benefiting every Kenyan. When that subsidy was paid, the little that the millers accept that they were paid, where did we find the subsidy, the cheap unga? It would be taken to supermarkets at night. Why at night? It would be available to consumers for a few hours and they were back. So they talk about the unga of 100 shillings, but none of them is able to say, in this shop, in this town, in this supermarket, the unga for 100 shillings was available between this day and this day. It has been demonstrated that the money for subsidies ended up in the pockets of select few. It has been demonstrated that the money for unga subsidy was used to oil the Azimio campaigns. And we saw the money in the elections. We saw this election was one of the most costly elections. It was one of the most moneyed elections. Where were they getting this money from? Well, every other Kenyan was crying. The economy was not performing well. The cost of living was high. Where were they getting the money from? So that is number one. Number two, there is the other obligations that the country has. And those obligations were penned during the reign of President Uhuru. When President Uhuru had said that after the handshake on some of the issues, he used to consult Raila Omolo Odinga, and when he implemented the advice that Raila gave him, things turned out well. Which are these things that were turning out well? As a country, we must agree that at this time, the way out of our food issues is for us to become food self-sufficient.
And how do we do that? Through?
One, we have to subsidize our farmers. And I do not agree with government that subsidizing farmers is only providing fertilizer. Good, hybrid, high-yielding seeds are more costly in this country than fertilizer. Maybe we had better give our farmers a subsidy on seeds, which largely can be produced here by Kenya Seed, as opposed to fertilizer that we are bringing out. These are the kind of conversations that as parliamentarians and the executive we would wish to have. Is it time we held a national food conference so that collectively we can sit on one table and chart a way forward. Number 2, climate change and the availability of rain. It is now clear in everybody's mind. So what should we do as Kenyans? We must shift emphasis to harvesting and storing water. We must do a new water survey that allows us to see where we can be able to tap water and store it from the mountains where water discharge is happening. We must look at the confluences of rivers so that at the point where the rivers are joining, we can build mega dams so that when we have rains, like we are supposed to have now, the volumes of water are going to be increased. But all that water, even as we have suffered about food shortages now and drought, all that water is going to be going into the Indian Ocean. Because the only dam we've completed is the dam in Kirinyaga.
River Dam.
River Dam. So what about the rest of the country? We must shift focus.
All right.
The government has identified very prime sites for dams construction. But because we do not have money, the government is packaging those dams so that we enter into a PPP, where we provide prime sites for dam construction and able financiers come build the dams, get the dams to fill with water, and then the government will enter into a water purchase agreement, like we do with Kenya Power when we are buying tokens. The government is not in the business of building dams. I don't think the government even should be in the business of building roads. It is providing the necessary infrastructure for people, entrepreneurs, to thrive in this country.
All right.
At a cost that makes what the entrepreneurs are producing affordable to Kenyans.
Okay. All right. And of course, those are some of the interventions that the government, through you as members of parliament, are putting in place to bring the cost of living down. But there are several areas identified by the opposition, some of them being the lowering of the cost of living, overtaxation, opening of a server, reinstatement of the full renegade, so to say, of commissioners of the IEBC. Among these issues, do you think, no, not as DMM of the UDA party, as a Kenyan, as a leader, do you think there are things that can be compromised between President William Ruto and the Honorable Raila Odinga?
Let me pick the issue of the servers. If really we are interested, and if Raila is interested in sorting out this issue of servers, let us begin and end our elections at the polling station.
Which is what is provided for?
No, it is not what is provided for. You vote and count at the polling station.
Yes.
That is what ends at the polling station.
And the result is fine.
After that, you do carry a document and the ballot boxes to a tallying center at the constituency or at the county level. And the presiding officer at the polling station hands over the voting materials to a returning officer. Then that returning officer has the responsibility of making new entries in a new form and then doing the declaration. Even if the results at the polling station are altered at the tallying center, the only way you can overturn those results is by going to court. Even when you have provided evidence, why can't we amend the law? Why has it taken Raila and in his 5 attempts at the presidency to get his parliamentarians, including this time when he had a majority in parliament, when his ODM and Uhuru's Jubilee combined after the handshake to have a commanding majority in parliament? What reforms did they bring to the electoral laws in our country? Now he wants to jump outside after squandering the opportunity, all wanting, hoping that he was going to benefit from the weak electoral laws that were existing, because apparently this time loud, the deep state and the system was on his side.
Those are just allegations, Mheshimiwa. As we wind up in less than a minute and a half, please explain to us. Here we are. The opposition says they're going to the streets at least twice a week to pressure President Ruto on some of the demands they have made. What is the way forward?
I really wish that the president can stop listening to us politicians for a minute.
And do what?
And listen to the voices of the other Kenyans in the country who are unhappy about the situation that we find ourselves in. I wish Raila Odinga can also stop listening to his cabal, cartel, and brigade of politicians, and listen to the voice of the other Kenyans who are dissatisfied with the situation that we find ourselves in. And after listening, both of them should ask themselves this question: do things have to happen the way they are happening now? Do the scenarios have to unfold the way we saw them unfold on Monday? If in their conscience they are convinced that this is not the way that things are supposed to happen, then they should ask other leaders in this country to facilitate a sitting where Kenyans dialogue together.
Kenyans dialogue together.
Yes.
You're throwing it back to the conscience of the president and the Honorable Raila Odinga.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's interesting.
Because it is important. There is no wishing away that Raila Odinga has his 5 million voters. And consistently, he has demonstrated he has his 5 million voters. Unfortunately, the 5 million voters are not the majority of voters in this country. These 5 million voters will never make Raila Odinga the president. He had better listen to the other Kenyans who hold the balance that could make him president. Why do we want to bring our country on our knees? Does our country have to breed? But even more importantly, this is the biggest question. We have international observers who come and observe our elections. They gave our 2022 elections a clean bill of health. What is this contest that Raila Odinga is bringing about the elections? Where is the voices of these international observers? Now that the very election that they gave a clean bill of health is being disputed, where is their voice? Did they only want to come to Kenya after we have killed ourselves, Kenyans against Kenyans? Lastly,
very quickly,
when does ICC put a country on its watch list? I think it is time the ICC put Raila Odinga and his Azimio Brigade on the watch list.
Has it gotten to that?
Because it has gotten there. How many people died on Monday? How many people will die next Monday? And by Thursday? That is how the numbers grow.
All right.
This is an electoral dispute. The 2007 mayhem in Kenya was as a result of an election dispute. The genocide in Rwanda was as a result of an election dispute.
All right.
We must do this stitch in time. The alternative is that we will have to rebuild the entire country.
Absolutely. This is time for us to put a cap on Prime Edition. And of course, probably diffuse a bit of the politics with some reggae. You're a lover of reggae?
I could do with some reggae. But of course, not the BBI reggae.
Okay. It's up next. Speaking to the Honorable Duncan Mathenge, the Member of Parliament for Nyeri Town, as regards how the country moves forward, of course, in the showdown we continue to see in the political arena. This is where we put a cap. My name is John Jacob Kioria. Thanks to a sign language interpreter, and thank you to you, Mheshimiwa, for honoring us with your presence tonight. Have yourself a good night. God bless you. See you around.